Have you ever not slept for so long that you started hallucinating? What was your experience? Yeah. After 70 hours or so, it's pretty disorienting, and rational thinking starts to get very slow. The hallucinations are not realistic, but are more like gaps in your vision that are shaped like things. Might see a silhouette at a distance, or briefly around a corner. Very difficult to function in this state. Would not recommend. For me, the sleep afterwards isn't very quality either. I usually wake up feeling shitty still. It feels like I'm stressing in my sleep. Indeed. Especially with caffeine, which tends to mess with your system in unpleasant ways after so many hours awake. I suffered from horrific insomnia about 12 years ago. I was on Lexapro, and one of the side effects is insomnia. At the time, that wasn't well documented. So I tried everything from Ambien to alcohol, so I could sleep. I would usually get about a 3-hour nap at most, before being awake again. I would go 3 to 5 days without sleeping. Eventually, I hit the point of desperation, and start recreational substances to try and knock myself out. There were several occasions of hallucinations, but the one that sticks out is truly terrible. I was on day 6 without sleeping at least 5 hours. I was laying in bed and a friend came in to start talking with me. We had many great conversations since our friendship began, but hadn't talked in a while at that point. I told him how bad I was struggling and that honestly, killing myself would have been easier. He said he felt the same way many times, but that it was a terrible idea, and I knew how badly it had messed up his family. When I looked at him, he was a bloody mess on the side of his face, jaw ripped apart, teeth missing, but talking to me like nothing was wrong. He had been dead for a few years at that point. Suicide. Shot himself in his garage after years of substance abuse. And I just had a 3-hour conversation with a hallucination of a dead friend. I ended up switching meds to Celexa and my sleep issues disappeared within a month. So, if you are having sleeping issues, please, go see a document. It's a dark place that damn near took me. Ex-addict. Was driving home after a 3-day meth bender. Needed food, so drove into a McDonald's drive-thru. When asked for my order, I replied McChicken meal, please. Then they asked me again, and I said McChicken meal, please. Then they asked me again, and I was like, can't you fucking hear me? McChicken meal. And that's when I realized I wasn't actually saying anything. I was just replying in my head. I used to abuse Adderall, and would stay up 3 days straight working on bullsugar projects that I never finished. Anyway, one time I was at the end of a 3-day bender, where I had taken about 10 days worth of Adderall. As I laid down to sleep, I started hearing my mom arguing with my brother and his girlfriend. It went on for a long time, and I was like, surely they have to be at work and this sugar will end soon. Eventually my brother's baby started to cry, and the adults were too busy arguing to calm her down. I said fudgeth it, and stormed out of the bedroom. Down the stairs. RS. And the house was completely empty. Tie. Overseas on a deployment. Started getting sleep deprived for a period of time. Started hallucinating the big date / palm trees moving across the road like in the Lord of the Rings, when the trees walk. I went roughly 4 days on 5 hours sleep total. I could function fine, but I would just constantly hear things like people mumbling right next to me. Yeah. It's not like you see pink elephants on parade or anything. You think you hear people chatting behind you, or you see stuff moving just on the edge of your vision. Super creepy and unfun, but not particularly dramatic. I stayed up for 3 days straight when I was 17. On the 3rd day, I kept hearing people call my name, as if they wanted to ask me a question. It didn't help that I also thought it would be a good idea to go to school that day, multiple times a day. I would bolt upright and look around to see W Harlot wanted to my attention, only to see my fellow students huddled over their W. It got worse as the day went, and my friends were a little worried about how weird I was acting. I walked home after school, listening to my headphones as usual, but I still kept hearing someone call my name. American English. The music made it worse. RSE. Whatever I was hearing was already kind of muffled, and having a song playing in my ears only seemed to obscure it more. When I finally got home, I told my mom I wasn't feeling well. Went to my room and went straight to sleep at 4 in the afternoon. As nodded off, I heard that voice calling for me again, making me jerk out of my sleep. This repeated a couple times until I convinced myself that I already told my mom I was sick and if she really needed me, she could come get me. I finally went to sleep and didn't wake until 2 AM to use the bathroom and then went to sleep afterwards again until 9 AM the next day. I was an idiot. I hadn't slept for about 72 hours when I went to the doc gave me Ambien. I go home, get in bed and take one. A few minutes later, the floor was covered in water and the walls were melting. It was raining outside and the water on my windows was marching in formation. I've never known whether that was sleep deprivation or the effects of Ambien. I've never taken another. I was prescribed Ambien once. I took it and I could still wake up on it. But I started seeing the shadows in the corner of my room curling up and almost moving. It was freaky. I don't take Ambien anymore. I took Ambien one time and never again. Just one regular pill. I couldn't sleep in bed even after taking it, so I got up and decided to listen to music on my laptop. In the living room, we had a tall 6-foot metal light to light the room and 2 songs in the metal pole became rubber and started bending and twisting all around. I thought it was cool until suddenly it started whipping at me. I swore it was trying to kill me. I ran into bed and hid under the covers as I swore I could hear metal scratching against the floor and door. Never again. During exam week I pulled 3 all-nighters in the library between tests. The library was open 24 hours, so I'd just stay up all night making note cards then go take an exam during the day. I lived off campus and didn't want to spend the gas money. I'd go to the most isolated area, but the library would pretty much be cleared out by midnight. I started to see glimpses of people, and I thought it was a bunch of students fucking with me, but there was no one on that floor. I thought the lights went off at some point and maybe it was a sensor, so I started jumping around to reactivate it, but obviously, it was light the whole time. After a while I start to become seriously paranoid and I start hearing voices and things like that. It's not very fun. I have some serious issues with sleep and sometimes it will get to the point where I will start seeing things out the corners of my eye that aren't actually happening and I manage to scare the sugar out of myself. Please get enough sleep. Don't fall into the habit of staying up for days on end. The longer you stay up, the harder it is to fall asleep. It seriously gets harder to fall asleep the longer you go. And you think you're tired and you go to sleep and you just can't. And the sleep isn't even that good when you do eventually fall asleep. I was like 2-day awake and every time I laid on my bed I couldn't do anything besides stare at the ceiling with my head spinning, absolutely shit-faced and exhausted, and still couldn't actually get any sleep. And the sleep is indeed shitty. You wake up with a dry mouth, dizzy, terrible headache, still feeling tired, almost like a hangover. People Holler to reading this and have insomnia. Get help ASAP. It doesn't get better over time if you don't get help. Take care of yourselves. There's. Okay, story time. My mom suffers from narcolepsy and one of the first treatments they gave her basically drove her also completely insane. She was up for 5 days. One day I walked into her bedroom hearing her talking to someone. I look around and ask her who Loch talking to, and she tells me the lady in red. There is no one in the room at all, just us. I ask where is the lady and she says the lady sits on the dresser and talks to her all night. GHT. I was like 14 at the time, so I went to the kitchen and hid her medicine until my stepdad got home and could take her to the hospital. The doctor was super upset about the meds her doctor had given her. It was way too much. Anyway, she stopped seeing the lady after they got all that straightened out. Edit. Alright, I'm going to say it. Wow, this blew up. Apostrophe. Thank you all for your thoughtful and kind wishes for my mom. She does have good days and bad days. Her narcolepsy is caused by a small tumor on her brain. She gets better when it shrinks, and worse when it grows. It gets to about the size of a dime sometimes. They can't remove it, but are trying to keep it shrunk with medicine. That is scary. After 30 hours I started seeing insects on the walls and on my desk. that weren't there. Might have just been the light. Or paranoia because I'm massively afraid of spiders. Made it to 50 hours without really seeing anything else though. Please click subscribe if you enjoyed this video.